We've been talking about Parshat Vayishlach all week. We're going to talk about it today too, because it's this week's Parsha. Tomorrow morning in Shul, we will read the story of Jacob's transformation, including so many other parts of Vayishlach. There's one part of the wrestling match that Jacob has with this figure. And let's call the figure an angel for today. Today, we'll talk about the moment where Yaakov is holding on successfully to an angel, wrestling successfully with a divine being. It's very powerful. There's no real way of understanding this. This could be an articulation of a physical manifestation of the divine, which sounds strange to Jewish ears, but that's one of the things it could be. Another thing could be he's in an inner wrestling match and he's holding on to this old essence of himself in all of the complicated situations of his childhood. It could be, according to mystical thought, an avatar of his estranged brother Esav that he's wrestling with. And it could be just another person who's there. But it seems from the text that this is somehow a divine messenger. And when he saw that he had not prevailed against him, and this is really a tussle in the sand, he wrenched Jacob's hip at its socket, and we know that Yaakov limps away from this encounter. And then the figure says, I've always heard this in like a classic Count Dracula voice, right? Let me go for dawn is breaking. I was like, I'm not going to do the voice, but some Transylvanian accent, which is unkind and unfair, but I've always heard that. I can't stand the light. And Jacob says, I will not let you go until you bless me. This is chapter 32, verse 27 of the book of Genesis. And then this very important moment happens within the spectacular wrestling match. The figure says, Vayomer Elav says, Ma shemecha, what is your name? He replied, Jacob. Said the figure, Lo Yaakov ya'amer od shimcha, your name shall no longer be Jacob. Ki im Yisrael, your name will be Yisrael. Ki sarita im Elohim v'im anashim vatuchal. You have striven with beings divine and human and have prevailed. Now, when that name change happens, an essential part of it is you will not be known anymore as Jacob. So it's very interesting that just a few verses later, after his name is changed to Yisrael and will no longer be Jacob, his name Jacob appears in the Torah's text itself, which tells you something very interesting. The name change doesn't quite stick, or something else. There's a section in the Talmud that says, if it's the case that his name was Yisrael and would no longer be Yaakov, why does the Torah refer to him as Yaakov? And then the name change happens again a few chapters later. And again, just a few verses after being told, no longer will you be known as Jacob, the Torah calls him Jacob. So what's happening here? I want to relate this to a very powerful experience I had last night. UJA, along with other community organizations, hosted a solidarity rally outside of Park East Synagogue in New York City. Park East, you may remember, first of all, is a very, very established, wonderful shul, an Orthodox Jewish community, with a day school attached to it. And when they were hosting an event co-sponsored by Nefesh B'Nefesh, which is an organization that supports Aliyah to Israel, there were protesters outside, masked and screaming for Jewish blood. And the response from the city was not what it should have been. The police have owned that they allowed the protesters to get too close to the synagogue, something that I know the NYPD will correct. And the incoming mayor's spokesperson did not condemn the protest effectively. In fact, validated their attack. Our response was, no, that's not acceptable. And more than 1,000 of us last night, in the very bitter cold, stood together and sang and showed that we are proud to be New Yorkers, we are proud to be Jews, and we are proud to be Zionists. I was incredibly proud to stand there with my daughter, who is going to begin rabbinical school full time next year. And so she stood with me, with our community's rabbis. That was a very powerful experience for us to share. I share this because, in the context of the verses that we've discussed, becoming Yisrael is the journey that we certainly as a community celebrate. Becoming Yisrael means self-determination, not defined by a backstory of vulnerability and being manipulated by the outside world. It's so important for us to understand that Jacob does become Yisrael. That is incredibly important. And yes, as I said earlier this week, he is wiser by the wound. He's carrying all of his history, as do we. But it is also really important. It is crucial for us to see that the text does not suddenly forget that his name used to be Jacob. There is a vulnerability that he still carries. He knows his history. He tells his history. We don't only exist in a moment of affirmation, we carry all of the past experiences that we've ever had. The Talmud says this. The Talmud says this very interesting thing. Why is it that Jacob is known as Jacob still, even when his name is supposed to change? And the Talmud's answer is his primary name changed. His primary name became Yisrael. It doesn't forget. We don't forget, and Jacob certainly doesn't forget, that he is also deep down Jacob. Now, sometimes, friends, and therapy is a great place to explore this. If you've ever had a good experience with therapy, you know that this happens during it. I have been blessed to be taken care of, to be really held by skilled professionals who've helped me understand also this deep truth. There's an inner child in all of us that is sometimes more present because life brings us back to those moments of vulnerability. In fact, one of the things that's problematic about the protest that happened outside Park East just a week ago is that there was no way for the protesters to ever imagine Jewish vulnerability. Without acknowledging Jewish vulnerability, there is a very small chance, only barely a chance, that you could also see Jews as human. We are all vulnerable. And no matter how strong or successful we work to become, we always carry our backstories, just like Jacob. Vulnerability is what makes us human. And we're not looking to perpetuate our vulnerability. It's one of the great transformations of the modern Jewish people. Zionism was a big part of that, a very powerful global expression of Jewish belonging and dignity, self-determination, not being defined by the other. In fact, in developmental language, you might even suggest that by not being defined by the other, we grew out of our own adolescence. To become Yisrael is an incredibly complicated journey, isn't it? And I wish for an angel to hold us and say, no longer shall you be known as Jacob. But you know what? We are the children of Jacob too. There is a vulnerability, an ongoing one, within us, sometimes in relation to our neighbors, sometimes because we always have growing to do. But to ignore that vulnerability is to see us as less than human. We should acknowledge it ourselves, and we should expect our world to understand that about us too. We are Yisrael, and we should be proud. We walk having healed from our wounds, determined to be stronger, determined to take good care of ourselves and the world. That inner vulnerability is part of what helps us do that so well. The Torah tells us, after we've been liberated, to never forget that we were once enslaved in Egypt. 36 times the Torah tells us that. It should be a mark of honor, a badge of pride, that we have made it this far and become even stronger. The beauty of who we are is unmistakable. If the world around us needs reminders, let's teach this lesson loud and proud. We will show up to remind the world of who we are. We should also recognize that part of the challenge here is demonstrating to the world that we are vulnerable too. That doesn't make us less. It makes us even more beautiful. There is a little Jacob in all of us. We are all everything we've ever been. The question is, how do we grow? Can we keep growing? Can we make sure to manifest the Yisrael in us even more? So friends, blessing us as we go into Shabbat with an appreciation of the beautiful, vulnerable selves we are, and pride in the strong and successful nation that we are. That took a lot of inner transformation, and we have become wiser through all of the wounds. Last night was a spectacular demonstration, thanks to UJA in New York City, of who we are and who we will always be. Blessing you with a really good Shabbos, friends.